ISB does actually compete well with IIMs, and although it might have a bit of a higher fees, I have scored 740 on my GMAT and I have gotten an admit from ISB for their Young Leaders program. In this interview, it's a lot more relaxed as compared to what you might expect from a CAT-based college. I realized that taking it right now in my college days was an advantage as compared to when I'm working, when I might not get the time. So GMAT is actually different from the CAT in a very significant manner in that it is an adaptive exam. Hi, my name is Aniket. I have scored 740 on my GMAT and I have gotten an admit from ISB for their Young Leaders program. So ISB has 3 different avenues for you to join their college. The Young Leaders program is for students who are still in college. So you get the admit from ISB to join their college after you get 2 years of mandatory work experience. There's an early entry option as well for students, for working professionals who have less than a year of experience but who have started working, and they can join the program as well after they complete their 2 years of experience. And then there's the normal MBA program for people who have more than 2 years of work experience, who can apply to the normal route and get in for the program. So as I'm still a college student, I applied through their Young Leaders program and I managed to get in. So I took my GMAT because I knew that if I wanted to go for an MBA in the future, in case things didn't work out right now, then taking it during my college days was the best plan possible, because I might not get enough time to study later on, and the score is valid for 5 years. So because the way the exam was structured, I realized that taking it right now in my college days was an advantage as compared to when I'm working, when I might not get the time. So for my preparation, the way it differs from CAT and is somewhat similar also is that in GMAT there's a lot more focus on grammar. So you need to be able to identify very small and tiny errors in the way a sentence is structured, as to identify what the reading comprehension is saying about a question, or the way you need to critically reason a question. So in some aspects, GMAT is a lot different from CAT in that it expects you to be able to analyze and solve a question very critically as compared to CAT. But in some ways it's also similar, because the process and the procedures to prepare for that exam are a lot similar, as you need to dedicate around a similar portion of your time for the exam as well. So in GMAT there are for the verbal section and the quant section, which make up the portion of your final GMAT score. For quant, it's slightly different from CAT in that there are data sufficiency questions as well. So based on a question, you need to guess whether is this information sufficient to solve the question, or do I need some further information to solve the question. So these questions can be a bit tricky, especially for non-engineers, and it might be a bit difficult for you in the beginning. But after a few months of practice, I started to understand grasp the basics of it, and I was able to solve those questions well. So GMAT is actually different from the CAT in a very significant manner in that it is an adaptive exam. So as you start solving, getting more questions correct in your GMAT, the level of difficulty in the exams actually starts rising for you. So in a way, this is an indication that yeah, you're performing well, but it can also lead to a slight drop in confidence if you're not able to get the more difficult questions. So you need to tailor your expectations for this exam also accordingly, as to expect as to whether, okay, am I able to solve this up to this level of questions, I can get it right, but beyond this it's going to be a bit difficult for me. So once you have that in mind, it becomes a bit more easier for you when you're giving the exam. So for my GMAT, I actually referred to some YouTube videos for preparation, and I solved the official material that I had received from GMAT for my exam. So for this, I gave 2 mock tests that were given by GMAT, and I referred to a YouTube channel called GMAT Prep and GMAT Ninja to help me in my preparation. So I referred to these resources for my exam. So for the interview of ISB, in some ways it's somewhat similar to CAT-based colleges as well. In that it's a free-flowing conversation between an alumnus of ISB and one professor of ISB as well. I think I had 2 different alumni for my interview. So in this interview, it's a lot more relaxed as compared to what you might expect from a CAT-based college, but in a manner you also need to create a lasting impact on the interviewers as well. So the interviewer started off with them asking me about why I wanted to join ISB and as to why I was leaving pharmacy for a management-based field. So the conversation started off in that way, and then it moved through a different avenues about my personal life and how I was improving on my communication skills. I was improving on my mathematical skills because I'm a non-engineer. Then they asked me about my hobbies as well. So as I'm interested in kickboxing, they asked me about my kickboxing as well, and one of the alumni was a kickboxer. So the conversation went in that direction as well. So they wanted a lot more overall well-rounded candidate for this interview. So you be prepared about as to what you have done till now, and make sure that you know about that, you have knowledge about your previous hobbies and extracurricular activities and academics and some general knowledge as well. But be ready to have a conversation with the interviewer, because it's going to be a lot more of a free-flowing dialogue as compared to a structured set of interview questions. So some of the pros that ISB has is that it is internationally a lot more recognized, on par with the IIM ABCs of this country. So in this manner, ISB does actually compete well with IIMs, and although it might have a bit of a higher fees, the batchmates who join ISB, all of them have work experience. So the learning from a batch where all of you have worked before, and it's a 1-year program, so it's a lot more streamlined as compared to CAT-based colleges. So these are the few pros of ISB which I am evaluating before I make my decision. So ISB is actually looking for people with work experience. So even if you are a fresher, you need to get mandatory 20 months of work experience before you join the college for their MBA. And I think in a way it is helpful, because your learning from an MBA is maximized when you have gone through a work organization where you have to work from 9 to 5 every day, have to meet deadlines, have a knowledge about how the industries and markets actually work. So when you have this knowledge beforehand, your learnings from an MBA are maximized, because you know what to expect later on as well. So you view the course slightly differently as a student might, because a student might focus more on the academics, but once you have the work experience as well, you view the different management related communication skills and the different hierarchical structures as well a bit more differently as compared to when you have just a fresher out of college. So for GMAT, the English section can be a bit challenging for Indian students, because they are looking for a person who, because the questions expect you to have a good level of fluency in English, which can affect your overall scores as well. So there are sentence correction questions in GMAT where you need to focus very minutely on the differences in the placement of comma or punctuation as well. So there are very minute differences, and you're able to grasp them and identify them quickly. There are reading comprehension passages which are similar to CAT, but the way the questions are structured might be a bit more difficult. And for critical reasoning questions, you need to read a question and then analyze it on your own, and then answer the question based on what you think is the answer they are looking for. The level of fluency they expect you to have in English is a lot more advanced as compared to other management related examinations. For quantitative aptitude, my preparation was somewhat similar to CAT and other management related examinations. But for GMAT, there's a specific section called data sufficiency, where you need to look at the question and identify whether is this information enough for me to solve the question. That's all that they're expecting. So you need to be able to look at the question in that aspect as well. For analytical radical assessment, they basically give you a statement and a few points to elaborate on that statement, and you need to look at that statement and identify 2 to 3 ways in which you can best answer the question. You need to identify 2 to 3 flaws in the argument mostly, and then write your answer accordingly. So this is the way I had structured my analytical writing assessment, where out of 6 marks in that section, and you get, I think, total of 6. So the way I structured it was, I would identify two to three major flaws in the argument, and then I would elaborate on those flaws in my answer. So that's the way you analyze the argument and then write about it. So that's the basic premise of the question that they have given. For GMAT, the best I can suggest to you is make sure that you have your grammar basics and rules very thoroughly done, because you need to be able to identify those flaws very quickly. And I would suggest that you be open-minded regarding the quantitative questions, because you need to be able to just grasp the questions well and see whether it's sufficient for me to solve the question or not. So in some ways it's similar to the way you might prepare for CAT, but try and be a bit more have a bit of more of a broader bent of mind, because this might not be as easy as compared to the way you solve CAT-based questions. And although it might still not be as easy as you might expect, your graph will improve in GMAT once you start getting the basics, and I think at the end you can solve most of the questions well once you have the basics done thoroughly. So I'm evaluating at the moment. I have 2-3 different B school calls, and I'm evaluating my options at the moment. I'm looking at the different placement records of the colleges, the batch sizes, and the peer groups as well. And I'm trying to evaluate my decision for which college to join based on the return of investment I can expect and how I can best maximize my MBA from that college.